I haven't been making YouTube video lectures for a while because I've been working on papers, still able to write and busy doing that instead. But I thought today I would present the paper that I presented on June 8th to a panel discussion at the meetings of the American Psychoanalytic Association on June 8th. This panel was celebrating the 50th anniversary of the publication of Ernest Becker's Pulitzer Prize-winning book, The Denial of Death, 1974. It was published. In 2004, I wrote, I guess it was kind of a review, but it was more of a critique of Becker's book. The title of that paper and of this one is The Melancholic Existentialism of Ernest Becker. And that paper was published in the journal Free Associations in 2004. That was volume 11, part 3, number 59, 2004, pages 422 to 29. So this version is abbreviated and slightly revised, but pretty much the same paper. Okay, the melancholic existentialism of Ernest Becker. Based primarily on the work of Otto Rank and Norman O. Brown, Becker's work elaborates an existential psychology in which human beings suffer from a primary death anxiety that is, contra Freud's view, irreducible to infantile fantasies and fears. Like Blaise Pascal, Søren Kierkegaard, and others in the existentialist tradition who write of our constant need for diversion from the dismal reality of our condition, Becker argues that our death anxiety necessarily and quite literally drives us to distraction. Repression, if not imposed by civilization, would be self-imposed due to our need to deny the body that in a variety of ways, especially in its anal functions, is a constant reminder of the mortality we cannot face. Society offers a range of possibilities for heroism in which death is denied and an illusion of immortality constructed. The traditional psychoanalytic animus against Marxism here reaches a new pitch of intensity as Becker asks what new distractions a revolutionary society would offer its liberated proletarians to keep them from going mad. While asserting that we live in both, quotes, a mystic temple and a, quotes, hall of doom, Becker greatly privileges the hall over the temple. In his view, the despairing melancholic is in some ways more honest than we self-deceived and adjusted ones. For Becker, the therapeutic project of psychoanalysis is futile. For the analysis of defenses and illusions that is supposed to liberate us, in reality only exposes us to unbearable truths. I find it odd that the recent documentary celebrating Becker's work is called, quotes, All Illusions Must Be Broken, a title more in keeping with the psychoanalytic project that Becker rejects. This makes me wonder whether Becker's admirers really understand what he is actually saying. Becker acknowledges that he embraces what William James called a morbidly minded, as distinct from a healthy-minded view of the human situation. He's honest enough to admit in Chapter 2 that this is a personal choice, presumably grounded in his personal subjectivity. But in the entire rest of the book, he assumes and implies the objectivity of this morbidly minded view. For Becker, not only death, but our anality, the human body, and life itself are represented, for the most part, negatively as frightening, disgusting, or absurd phenomena. In a preface to the 1997 edition, Sam Keane contrasts Becker's view of nature with Walt Disney's. Quotes, describing Becker's view, "Mother Nature is a brutal bitch, red in tooth and claw, who destroys what she creates. We live," he says, "in a creation in which the routine activity for organisms is tearing others apart with teeth of all types, biting, grinding flesh, plant stalks, bones between molars, pushing the pulp greedily down the gullet with delight, incorporating its essence into one's own organization, and then excreting with foul stench and gases the residue." Unquote. Surely, in opposing Becker's view of Mother Nature as an all-bad object, we need not embrace Disney's view of her as all good. The truth is, sometimes people delight in their bodies, secretly enjoy their anal functions, and are, if not exactly like John Keats, half in love with easeful death, at least having managed to achieve what Erik Erikson describes as integrity versus despair and disgust, and having fully lived, are able to face the prospect of personal extinction with equanimity. While death anxiety certainly exists, it is by no means the only or the anxiety, and not all other anxieties are reducible to it. Certainly, I would not support the Freudian view that death anxiety is reducible to castration anxiety, but neither will I support the idea that all other anxieties are reducible to death anxiety. Unlike Heidegger and many others who point to the positive functions of death anxiety, how, for example, a brush with death can awaken one to the value of life, Becker mostly stresses our need for the denial of death. One evening, not long ago, I got a text from a patient who was in an ambulance being rushed to hospital. He was having a heart attack, and in case he was dying, he wanted me to know how grateful he was for our work together. This is a man not usually given to gratitude. Instead of denying that he might be dying, he used this threat to advance toward the reparative position. Becker's epistemological privileging of existential anxiety and refusal to recognize the other side of the ledger of human experience, in which we find despair countered by delight, pain with pleasure, hate with love, and bitterness with thanksgiving, this bias calls to mind Nietzsche's view of personality, of psychopathology, that is, as a disguised subjective confession. Nietzsche's view of philosophy, I mean to say, Nietzsche, 1886, view of philosophy as, quotes, disguised subjective confession. Becker appears to work with anxiety and depression as his major unquestioned premises. Dismissing all positive attitudes towards human experience as founded upon denial and illusion, he inevitably fails to question his own negative premises. Why was Becker unable to recognize the one-sidedness of his attitude of despair and disgust? If the psychoanalytic relativization of false claims to universal validity by tracing them to their origin in particular attitudes of specific personalities was ever called for, it is necessary here. For while capturing many valid insights into the dark side of the human condition, Becker's perspective becomes increasingly unreal in its one-sided vision of the human situation. In seeking to deconstruct Becker's ontology of anxiety or basic mistrust and his melancholic outlook, I in no way intend to reject his existentialist understanding of our unique predicament as symboling and self-conscious beings, aware of our separateness and impending demise. But I in no way regard such awareness as intrinsically unbearable, let alone as justification for a leap into a religion of consoling illusion. For the same symbolic consciousness that awakens us to a knowledge of our separateness and ultimate death, at the same time awakens us to a knowledge of our connectedness and of the gift of life. Like the Lacanians, William Richardson proving the exception in this regard, Becker usually associates the real with the horrific and seldom with the sublime. In a few passages early in the book, he addresses the awe-inspiring aspect of the reality encountered outside repression and denial. But he regards this as overwhelming and paralyzing and needing to be defended against by the individual simply in order to function. As his argument proceeds, this positively overwhelming aspect of the real, that is, the mystic temple, is increasingly displaced by its negatively overwhelming aspects, its association with disintegration, shit, and death, the Hall of Doom. In my view, Becker's ontology of anxiety is a contemporary manifestation of the Gnostic heresy that Judaism and Christianity have always sought to reject, even while being infected by it in the process. According to the Bible, the creation is good. But for Becker, it is a meaningless, chaotic realm of disorder, disintegration, and death against which human beings need to be protected by illusions of meaning, by a Gnostic religion positing another, more orderly and meaningful world beyond this vale of tears. This Gnostic devaluation of the creation, together with its splitting of the realms of darkness and of light, has always been resisted by monotheism. Not only orthodox versions of Christianity, but also its demythologized existentialist and religionless variations are capable of affirming both Thanatos and Eros without privileging either over the other, that is, of transcending paranoid schizoid splitting and part-object functioning for the whole object orientation of Klein's depressive or reparative position. Freud in 1923 argued that since the nature of death must of necessity remain a mystery to the living subject, whatever attitudes we have toward it are likely to be influenced by unconscious fantasy and hence will vary with the nature of the fantasy underlying them. When death is fantasied as the ultimate abandonment and helplessness, it assumes a terrifying aspect in light of our displaced separation anxiety. Similarly, when fantasied as the ultimate castration or superego punishment, or to add a Kleinian perspective, as a persecutory attack by an all-bad part object, death becomes an uncanny and horrifying prospect. But sometimes death is fantasied in much more positive terms, as reunion and refusion with the primal mother or other lost objects, as the eternal bliss of oneness with God in heaven, etc. One need not minimize the significance of our unique situation as an animal burdened with the knowledge of its impending demise in order to accept the psychoanalytic idea that our attitudes toward our mysterious fate are significantly influenced by unconscious fantasy. The fact that Ernest Becker produced such a one-sidedly dark and pessimistic vision of human existence suggests the nature of the persecutory fantasies that may have gripped him. He was dying while he was writing this book. This might explain his essentially cynical view of religion as necessary illusion. Like T.S. Eliot, Becker believed, quotes, humankind cannot bear very much reality, unquote. That's T.S. Eliot from Burnt Norton, number 1 of 4 quartets. Humankind cannot bear very much reality. Both Miguel de Unamuno's Saint Emmanuel the Good, Martyr, and Dostoevsky's Grand Inquisitor, the brothers Karamazov, would gratify mankind's alleged need for consoling illusion by offering us, quotes, magic, mystery, and authority, unquote. According to Paul Tillich, history has shown that the Grand Inquisitor is always ready to appear in different disguises, political as well as theological, unquote. Today, he appears in the guise of philosophers and psychologists who, in the name of empathy and compassion for human weakness, seek to support or even join, rather than resolve, our defenses and resistance to facing inner and outer reality. In defiance of Christ's assertion that, quotes, ye shall know the truth and the truth shall make you free, John 8, 32, the Grand Inquisitors, old and new, patronize humanity, offering us consoling illusion rather than liberating truth. Though perpetually oscillating between paranoid schizoid and depressive reparative dynamics, when splitting is diminished and ambivalence, Klein's self and object, whole self and object functioning, more accessible, when the forces of love, eros, counterbalance the forces of envy and hate, thanatos, confidence in one's capacity to love and make reparation for one's hatred and destructiveness generates hope and overcomes despair. In what Erik Erikson, in 1950, described as the attitude of basic trust, we find the essence of a mature faith that is no illusion.